Hey, lovely, sexy hobby people. Right, here we go. As soon as I saw that they were announcing this, I just had to have one. It's been a little while, but I finally got my hands on the Airfix Alvis FV622 Stalwart Mk.2, affectionately known as a Stolly. This was a six-wheeled, all-terrain, swimming transport cargo truck, basically. Let's have a look. It kind of like operated, I think, from the 60s through to the 80s. Let's have a look. So we get a big bag of plastic. Airfix being a pain in the arse still. With that, we get our instructions. It's a top opening box. You're not missing much on the back. Let's pop those down there. Let's pop that there. Put those there. The front of the box shows a Stolly in beast mode, going through some difficult terrain. You're not missing much on the bottom side there. It's just some multilingual call-outs. But on the opposite side, you have a little bit of history and then the various colours, various options that you have for this particular kit. Let's have a look at the instructions. We've got some, I'm assuming, cartographed decals, so they look good. Very typical for the time markings. It looks like you also have, so it looks like you have here a decal for the instrument panel in the driver's cab, and then we have number plate for the 3 different versions, and then just some other bits and pieces. We've obviously got a flammable warning here and some eyes. These white stripes will be located on the back of the vehicle and are part of the night driving mode for British Army vehicles. So you'll often see these white stripes in the centre of a military vehicle, and at night when you are driving on no headlamps, these will illuminate so that the vehicle following behind can see where you are. Right, let's have a look. So, instructions, we've got a little bit of history here on the front, and then in different languages. Then we have some multilingual warnings, the assembly icons, and then we're straight into it. Look at this. So, unlike the Shannon class lifeboat that we looked at the other week, this isn't coloured, so that as you paint it, the paint colours are on the sides or on the parts. Whereas with the Shannon, when we were building the Shannon up, they were in those instructions you could see where they'd put the different colours: the blue, the black, the greys, the orange. And this one, I think, is just highlighting where your last part that you'd put onto that assembly. So we're coming in with the flat bed of the 6x6 truck, building up the underneath of the chassis, and then we're adding in the seats, etc., for the crew cabs. Now, I think at one point I think these are radios. I think that's a radio there. I think that's a battery. So it depends on which version you have, but it's either going to be, I think, either Larkspur or a Clansman radio. Somebody let me know in the comments who may have had time on these. Then we've got the bulkhead going in at the back of the cabin. That looks, is that the radiator? Didn't notice it. If that's the radiator, that's interesting, because that then means that the radiator is being used to heat the cab up. I can't see that being a thing, surely. Oh, excuse me. We've then got the front going on. Now, I believe you can have this so that you have the swim vane or the swim board either erected or lying flat against the cabin front. But we're coming in with the exhaust system here on one side, the rest of the decking, the decking in the cargo area, and etc. The access hatch here, and then the tail boards and side boards. Maybe not the sideboards. Okay. So it looks like you're going to put the rear tail board on before flipping it upside down to add in the suspension for each of these. Now it's saying don't glue part of these suspension items, so that's going to be interesting. The axles are going in with the individual hubs, hub backs for those. Yeah, that looks quite complicated actually. I'm sure it'll look good when it's done, but it's an interesting arrangement. So then we've got the bottom running board being fitted after all that. Right, so this is handy. It looks like the glass, the clear portions of this get attached, glued on from the outside of the canopy, which means that you can paint your canopy, not canopy, your cabin, I should say. You can paint your cabin and then add the glass in afterwards. We get a couple of jerry cans. This looks like a water jerry can actually, that you can pop into the back. Got some Pioneer tools going in. Yeah. So here's your swim board. So you can either have it in the stowed position or in the open position. Okay, so in the stowed position, it will lie flat against the cabin. In the open position, it will tilt forward, so that as you're propelling yourself through the water won't come up in front of the cabin, and that board will push it away to the sides. So you have your side panels going on here. Now, I seem to remember that these were at one stage a multi-fuel vehicle, so they could run on sort of like kerosene, diesel, petrol. But I think the British Army abandoned that after a time because they were finding that, despite the fact that they were multi-fuel, they were running better on, I think, diesel than they were anything else. So the Army just went back to, sod it, we'll run everything on diesel. So the tyres don't look like they're weighted, which I think is a shame. I don't know, I haven't seen any aftermarket parts yet. So let's have a look at the colour plates. We have an Alvis Stalwart Mk.2 for British Army of the Rhine, BAOR, Exercise Spear Point Crusader, Bergen-Hohn Training Area near Hanover, West Germany, September 1980. So we've got a two-tone camouflage pattern here, the standard sort of like NATO green and black. The tilt, the canvas tilt appears to be in a khaki brown colour. Quite often canvas tilts were also painted green and black. You then had D Squadron, 4th Royal Tank Regiment, British Army of the Rhine, West Germany, 1981, for this B scheme. So matte olive drab is the colour that they're putting on the canvas tilt. And then C scheme is Royal Army Ordnance Corps, RAOC, which is now the Royal Logistics Corps, but they were called the Royal Army Ordnance Corps right up until 1992, I think. Ludgershall Vehicle Depot, Wiltshire in England to 1969. So this is an early example. Yeah, it looks good. Like I say, I'm disappointed that we haven't got weighted wheels. I don't know if there are any aftermarket kits yet. Let's have a look. Right then. So it's all in this green colour, apart from obviously the clear sprues. These look like our ancillaries. I don't know if that's another radio pack there, or batteries, could be. That's a radio pack. We've obviously got our jerry cans. We've got a water jerry can and, is that it? 2 water jerry cans? Because normally they have the water on both sides, but I don't know. Yeah, and the Pioneer tools and some other bits and pieces there. Right. So here's our clear. And our clear looks really good. Really is like see-through. Yeah, I mean, that is really nice. Now, I think this is part of the muffler system for the exhaust. And they've chosen to mould it in, and it is slightly textured, they've chosen to mould it in this clear acrylic. I'm assuming it's almost like a clear acrylic. But you can see on the main window in the centre of the cab, you've got a depiction of a windscreen wiper, and then the same on the 2 side panels at the front of the cab. So you've got a front side panel, the centre panel, and then another side front panel, and then obviously these windows on the sides. You entered and exited the cab through essentially manholes in the top of, in the roof, all designed obviously to ensure that the cab was as watertight as possible. So let's have a look at this first sprue. Sprue A, we have, do you know, that really does look like a radiator. somebody tell me, somebody, as I say, somebody who's got time on these, tell me if this here was the radiator. I can't believe that's the radiator that was in the cab, or it might have been part of the cooling system. I don't know, but it does look like a radiator to me. Am I imagining that? But we have the sides and the bottom for the chassis, and we have the top and main parts for the cab, including the hatches here. It all looks good. I'm just looking at, I mean, you can see some bruising coming through from where they've like ejected it. You've got ejector pin marks on some of these. In fact, you can see that on a lot of these parts. Some of them are more prominent than others. So, for example, I can't really see any ejector pin marks on the outward facing side of this, but I can on the hatches. So if you wanted to display them with the hatches open, you'd have to sort those out by the look of it. And then on the inside of the cab here, you've got a couple of ejector pin marks. One there, one there, one there. And yeah, so, and you've got quite a few on this big old piece here, but they don't seem to have transferred through. You can see a bit of bruising for it here, and then a couple of like bruised bits around here on these. So ejector pin marks are a bit hit and miss. So this is sprue B, and we have our exhaust system and the tailgate sides and the main bed for the cargo area. And obviously this, I think, would be the inspection cover for the engine bay. And again, it's a mix of some of these ejector pin marks. You can see the bruising coming through on the presentation side, and some you can't. So yeah, a mixed bag, like I say. We have some wheel hubs here, along with a lot of the suspension. So this is sprue D. So we've got a lot of the suspension here. Some wheel hubs. And yeah, so some wheel hub center caps, I think they might be, by the look of them, or maybe they fit into these assemblies here. There's a lot of D-rings here as well, which I think you're going to have to obviously be careful as you trim those out. You don't want them pinging off anywhere. But looking at this, it's extensive. There's a lot of small parts here. There's a lot of parts here that are halves that you are going to need to glue together. And this is sprue C. So here's our wheels. They're definitely not weighted. We've got our cockpit instrument panel here. I think this is an optional part. This piece here is an optional part. Our instrument panel. The wheels, they look good, but I think if somebody's done some nice resin ones, I might see if I can grab those. And we've just got various bits and pieces here that I'm assuming are going to be part of the suspension system underneath. Yeah, lots of these suspension system. We've got the steering wheel. We've got our trim boards, our swimming boards here. So this will be the one when it's in use. This will be the one when it's stowed. These look like the water jet nozzles. and they have moulded onto them the open and close covers. And then looking at the canvas tilt, there's not a lot of excitement on the canvas tilt, I don't think. It's been, I'm not being funny, but it's been sort of like quite, it's quite dull in its moulded depiction. You know, I've seen canvas tilts with all sorts of bloody creases in them, not just, you know, on Land Rovers, but 4-tonners and other vehicles that have them. And it would have been nice to have something rather than a pristine parade ground tilt. But you don't have to put this on either. You could literally, if you so wanted, leave it off and fill the back of your wagon with cargo. I don't know what pallet system they may have been using at the time. But if you were able to find out, I don't know, is Accurate Armour still going? Somebody let me know. I don't know if they've got anything which might be age appropriate to put into these, because as I say, these were I think in service from the 60s through to the 80s, and then they were phased out. Yeah, cool. I wanted to get this because I can remember seeing these, because I grew up in a village in Hampshire that was very close to the Remy garrison at Borden. I used to see these occasionally as a kid, but also our dad used to take us over to the training area behind the Remy camp where they would practice their recovery, and there were sometimes like damaged vehicles left out on the training area that they would come and practice recovery on, you know, and some of them were stalwarts, you know, some of them were old chieftains, some of them were old Saracen armoured cars, Humber pigs, that sort of thing. So yeah, cool, brilliant. That's why I wanted to get it. It's kind of like reminds me of my youth growing up and seeing these. I might, I have seen that there are some aftermarket parts for the Ferret, and again, the Ferret was another vehicle that I used to see regularly from my days as a kid because of where we lived. And yeah, all being well, I'll get the Ferret and the Stolly built up. I've got the Chieftain still under my desk to build, and I need to grab a all 3 marks of the Challenger, and I need to grab a Centurion at some point. But there you go, that's what's included in the box with regards to our Stalwart, or Stolly as it was called. I'm probably going to build this sooner rather than later. I will have a look and see what aftermarket parts are available, and then I think I will start the build process. So hopefully you won't have to wait too long for a build video. Anyway, hopefully see you next time. Take care.